Michael Van Hecke,
Good morning, Tammy.
welcome to my podcast.
Thank you.
So, we were supposed to meet in London, were we?
Yes, back in February.
I didn't know I missed something. That's news to me. Anyway, that's good. I'm glad that you came here. Thank you very much for traveling.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You have a colorful history, teacher, for how many years?
Roughly, let's see, 35, 36, 37 years.
37 years.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've learned a few things.
learned a few things.
And now
right.
you're writing a textbook for Catholic kids.
Right,
Yes?
right. Well, that all started
History.
because of my
History,
teaching.
yeah?
History textbooks.
Yeah, so how does I'm curious, how does that make it different from any other history book?
Well, it goes back to my early teaching years, and I had to teach history, and I had what was ultimately a kind of a beautiful textbook. It had the tapestry on the front and gold, and it was lovely to look at. The cover was. So I had that to teach from, and then the inside was not so pretty. It was very chopped up, fragmented, just little. Basically, it was 580 pages of maybe distorted facts, to put it.
And
Mildly.
when was that published, that book?
That was in the 80s.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the late 80s. And it was boring for me as a teacher, and it was boring for my students. It was basically a read, remember, test, forget. And that's the way that the tool was created. So it's difficult. It's difficult to teach from that. It's difficult for students to learn from that. So what I did was because I had more of an education than that book. Although there was still plenty I didn't know about history, I just went to where you go to enrich yourself, and that's the library. At this particular school, I found a book. It was the first iteration of Anne Carroll's Christ the King, Lord of History. And what it was like an 8.5 by 11, 1 or 2 page stories on significant people through history. It just marched right through chronologically. And the stories were fascinating because she told stories.
Stories. I see.
So I would prep those. I would come in and tell the boys stories. They got excited about history. We all got excited about history. And then it made that book, it was useful as a spine of marching through the fundamentals. It lacked a lot of pieces. A lot of things that you found in her book weren't in there. And, Charlemagne got very, very little press in the main textbook because so much of what he did was church-oriented. Likewise with many other figures. I think, if I remember correctly, and I'd have to go back and buy a historic book, but there were about 2 paragraphs on Jesus. Now, it's not a religion textbook, but he was kind of a pivotal figure in history by any honest scholar's reckoning. And so it was obviously a distorted book. And so your original question, what makes it different? Well, we put that full story back into the tale of history. And you can't write that out and be an honest scholar. So, but most of the textbooks have written it out.
Right. And, we have a very secular society.
Right.
As do many other cultures at this time. Whereas, and I believe, I think maybe, and share this with you, that there's, that's one of the foundational things that's lacking in our society and has made it difficult for people to find their way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, history is one of the first things they cut out. You look back into the Marxist or socialist regimes, they want to cut history out. They don't want people to remember their history. So
easier to control them by then.
Oh yeah. So when I was a few years later, when I was a headmaster and had control over purchasing books for my school, I thought, well, I'm going to just go find a good Catholic textbook. This was early 90s. And it was then that I found that nobody publishes those anymore, and nobody had since the mid-'60s. So my colleague, Dr. Roland Lassiter, who I hired to come and help me sort of rewrite the whole curriculum, reimagine the whole curriculum in the manner of a Catholic liberal arts program, he helped me set about to produce new textbooks. And we thought originally we'd go back to the earlier Catholic textbooks and just dance them up with the modern graphics and whatnot. And as we dug more deeply into them, we realized this isn't really the tone. I would say for two reasons. One is that it's just language and storytelling is a little different in each age. And so we wanted to make sure what we had was meeting the age that we were in and telling it in a fresh way. The other thing that really forced us to do that was, I think a lot of the earlier books were built on a Catholic triumphalism, or at the very least, they were written for a society and culture where the fabric of Christianity was still more a part of daily life. So there were things assumed, and we were writing this for a much more hostile age, and so I felt it was very important that the students need to graduate from our school with enough understanding and wisdom that when they walk into the college halls, they don't get the rug pulled out from under them. I don't want them thinking everybody in the church was perfect and pure and everything the church ever did was perfect and pure.
Yeah, no, these are people we're talking about.
Yeah, but it was just others that made things bad. Well, it's not true. I mean, Christ as the body of Christ, and he is the church ultimately. He's perfect, but it's filled with us naughty sheep.
Yeah, right.
So we wanted them to just be aware that through history, the church and society and politics, culture, it's all made up from human beings, made up by human beings.
Well, I imagine if you've fallen away from faith, so you're looking for it whether you know it or not. So you're going to put people in positions where you think they ought to be perfect, because there's got to be something that's perfect, and they've forgotten what it is that's perfect, which is Jesus Christ. So these mistakes will be made, and I think it's pretty obvious where we sit now.
Yeah.
So is your textbook out? Is it printed and everything?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And in fact, we have 11 volumes out now.
Okay.
We have, just in the last year, actually we had one come out this week, the 9th grade history book. And what we embarked on beginning last year was the final phase of the complete K-12 history textbook series.
Oh, I see.
So we're working concurrently on a K through 3 series, and then we have 4th through 9th already in the Catholic schools. Then 10th grade we're working on right now. 11th grade we've had out for a few years. That's in American history. And then the last piece will be 2 semester books, a civics and an econ. And of course, we'll write those from inclusive of the church's understanding of both civics and economics. So it's kind of neat that we have a Pope Leo XIV to be in the chair of Peter while we focus on a book on economics.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So we're in approximately 800 schools already, so about 15% of the Catholic school market. Mm-hmm. And initially it was, the smaller, maybe independent Catholic schools. It was homeschoolers. But as we've grown the series and we've grown in our understanding of how to really produce a better textbook and ancillaries, it's really started to make it into and through the parochial school market, which is what we want. We want every Catholic student to learn history in a good way. Mm-hmm. So, do you think these books could be read more widely? These textbooks could be used more widely in the education system? Absolutely. Yeah. I think we could. We've actually looked at this question before, and with a little editing, we figure maybe 6% editing of a book. Mm-hmm. It would be able to be used in any school. Because, again, history's history. Mm-hmm. Let's tell the story. Mm-hmm. Whether they would accept it or not, that's the politics of it. No, I would say probably right now. But homeschooling, people who are just, secular people who really want to give their kids what I think is the foundation that they can stand on securely. Mm-hmm. They could also use this book. Yeah, there are a few history series that people use in homeschools and in schools. Not many schools though, but in some schools, and they're basically just a single story book, and so that works well in homeschools. Of course, we have a huge homeschool presence. Because what we've found is homeschool moms also like the order and functionality of a textbook. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as a teacher that has taught out of textbooks, I've sort of been anti-textbook because of the way they're made. Now, not because of them qua textbook. Mm-hmm. And I think when we look back at so many of what we call the great works, well, they were textbooks. Mm-hmm. The Summa, Thomas's Summa, is a textbook on theology. Euclid's Elements, that's like the first textbook on geometry. Mm-hmm. What they did is they collected all the proofs, the ideas, concepts, and they put them into a volume. Mm-hmm. Herodotus's Histories. Let's pull together the stories of the great men and put them in a volume to be used in the process of educating the youth. So a textbook doesn't have to be a bad thing. No. It can be a very good thing. And so we've tried to create ours in that way. Yeah, so it's basically stories, historical stories. That's right. Maybe with questions at the end of the chapters. Some questions at the end of the chapter. Yeah. And a teacher manual to help guide the teachers in how to teach it, so that the teachers are learning a kind of the classical pedagogy of how to teach human beings, because that also has been lost. And did you hearken back to an earlier day to find the way that you want to structure your book to past text from we did before the 60s? Yes, yeah. That looking at older textbooks, but also just collecting historians to help us think about what should be in this story. Are some of the stories modern stories? No.
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 Okay.
And here's our sort of our editorial take on that. And it's something that great historians have written on for millennia. And that is, if something's too close to you, you don't have perspective. So not that you can't or shouldn't look at things close to you and think about them, talk about them, studying them and whatnot. But that's really a different act than the study of history. You could roll that into what we would call current events. So let's take a pause of current events, study history. In studying history, we're going to find the actions and the ideas, the beliefs of the variety of human beings and what they ended up doing. And we're going to find the good things and the bad things. And it's going to give us a sense of how mankind works. When we look at history, when we look at all of the things that occur, the people and the events and the places, then we start to gather some ideas that allow us to look at our current events maybe a little more dispassionately, because we have to separate it from our own direct experience. And it allows us to look at the current events with the with the lens of history and with the lens of how people work. And then we can start to see how it's judged. But we also, I think, one of the lessons we learn in history is we can't judge it too tightly right now. We have to hold on to it loosely and see how time comes into play, how not really how time judges it, but we think that this person, Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama or somebody, we think they were enormously important. But what do they look like 100, 200, 300 years later? Were they actually really that important to the arc of history? And right now they might seem so, but maybe down the road they won't.
So these history books give you stories so that you can understand the modern stories and see the significance of the players in our modern world. Yeah?
Yes, I think by the philosophies that they follow, and the perspective that you gain by understanding how things play out across time, especially great spans of time. This is why we go back to the well of the great books or the great ideas. What are the great principles that we need to follow? Now, we have principles, we have philosophies today that didn't exist 500 years ago. So how do we deal with that philosophy? How do we say there might be some good here that advances us in something like being able to have a podcast? But how do we do that while still gripping the rails of truth at all times? I think that's really important. And when education is today's headlines, the kids have no concept or connection.
Yeah, they're not moored to the past. Huh? They're not moored to the past.
Right.
Understanding, standing on it.
Yeah.
Being informed by it. All of these things.
Yeah, and not that we want to go to the past.
Well, little kids look to their parents. That's the past. How would a child be if they had no parents? We know that that's not a good, even if you are missing one parent, it's a tragedy.
Right.
So history is very important, and your parents are, a pie piece of what informs a child.
Yeah. Yes, but I think too we have to understand that parents grow. I mean, you know, as a new grandmother that you're a very different person than you were 10, 20, 30 years ago. And that's a beautiful thing. So when I say we don't go back to history, it means I'm not saying that we should all go study the 1500s and start to wear the kinds of smocks they wore in the 1500s, because that's how we're going to recover society. It's not to that level. What we do when we look back to the 1500s is we say, what were the principles that guided these people? And then what guided them in the 1700s? And what guided them in the 1900s? And what factors came in so that we can understand the things that develop civilizations or the things that devolve civilizations?
So the different age groups that you have your history books for, there's also components of it that are philosophy and economics and all of these other disciplines come in to inform your understanding of history, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really powerful and beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the, I guess it's kind of the disinheritance that we've undergone with the teaching of history in the last, 40, 50, 60 plus years. You look at the schools today, and most of them, it's social studies. They don't even purport to teach history anymore. I mean, they do, but they don't end up calling it history till later, typically. And even then, I get a lot of middle school, even early high school teachers that call it social studies, but they're actually still teaching history. And the curious thing there is what they did is they extracted social studies out of the story of history. And I think because they didn't want us to really study history, they just wanted us to be obedient citizens and workers and all of this. So teach them about the different places, the races, the geography, what is economics, never with any context. So how do you know whether so I know some things about economics, but I don't know what's good or bad. Mm-hmm. What are the principles that I should follow? So what we would say, what we're doing is we're saying social studies is fine, but it's an element of history. It's not a thing unto its own. And what's so important for children is that they grow up with the story. And they're going to learn all of those pieces because all of those pieces come to us. All of those pieces make sense in virtue of the fact that they're part of a story. Economics is a very powerful and important thing. Our understanding of it over the centuries has adjusted, right? There are different kinds of market understandings today than there were 500 years ago. But it's always been important. So let's look at it, but don't look at it. I mean, these are children. Give them a sense of how it worked. And you give them that sense by giving them the story. Then they don't feel like it's some chore that they have to memorize and spit out on a test.
Yeah, no,
they're
they
being
answer to
imbibed in the
stories.
story.
Yeah, their eyes shine when you tell them stories, when they can make sense of it and imagine it. And you can't imagine something if it's not in story form.
Yeah.
So I have a question about history and how far back you go. You know, there's the story of Christ, but then there's also the biological story of the history of dinosaurs and all of that. And how are those? Do you delve into those differences?
We get into that lightly.
Mm-hmm.
It's the prehistory. Now we don't get into today's president because it's today. Likewise, prehistory is something that you have to be really careful about. By its very name, you know that, right? It's prehistory. This is so there's
nobody wrote it down.
Yeah,
as specifically so that we have a story to go by. Although we do have, I mean, people have told stories about
People tell
those
stories,
prehistoric times.
and there are some kinds of records. So we look at those. We do address them in the early chapters of a couple of the books, the ones that start in ancient times.
Yeah.
So they'll start in prehistory.
I see.
And kind of paint the picture, but also put it into the context of, now there's a lot of speculation here because it wasn't written down. There are certain stories and there are certain records that we can find, but there's a lot of unknowns here too. So we do ground them in the fact that there was something before histories were written down, because it's true that there was something before them.
Well, that would be archaeology, but archaeology is a history as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. In fact, we're starting our new the new series we're writing for K3. The first grade book starts with the priest that went and studied the caves in southern France, of the cave drawings.
Yeah.
So we feature an archaeologist, and we feature an historian and a geographer. So it's a good way to orient the little kids to say that these are how things come to be known.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds, well, I'd like to see the books. So what are the biggest mistakes that parents are making today when it comes to raising their kids and leaving out the faith that is, as far as I'm concerned, the underpinning and the way that you can find orientation from? So there isn't that in a lot of our education, maybe also in the Catholic tradition. Maybe they've also been pulled away from that because of the Marxism and the different ideologies that are being taught in our universities, and then twisting our education system. So what do you think that parents, what mistakes are they making, and how could they rectify those mistakes?
It's a pretty sweeping question. I think the mistakes that we make as a society in parenting, probably, now I'm in education, so I see things often in terms of education. Mm-hmm. But I think we follow the society. And so if the society is demeaning certain things, then we demean it, or we just kind of ignore it because it's too hard to do otherwise. It's hard to be countercultural. Mm-hmm. But yet, as Christians, that's what we're called to be. And we know that there's always a battle. There's a battle within us, as St. Paul talks about, but there's also a societal battle, and that battle is between the good and the evil. So it's easier to just kind of ignore things than to pick up a sword and take part of that battle.
Yeah, sense of omission.
Right.
Mm.
But there's so many, there's just a beautiful and growing number of opportunities for families to be countercultural, and to do it in the way that I think is the way the early Christians did it. And that was with great joy. I mean, we remember that beautiful image of see how they love one another. This is what we need to do today, is love one another. My wife and I, being involved in Catholic education our whole married life, mm-hmm. it's been the greatest of gifts, because we've been involved in these communities of joyful Catholic families, open to life, just supporting each other and trying to live lives of virtue. I think the modern educational system does not point us in that way. It says, just do what you're supposed to do, then you'll pass the test, and then everybody will be happy. That's not the Christian call.
No, it's not a guiding light, as you might say.
No. So what we embark on with the Catholic Textbook Project is, and this, I understood this from the get-go because of some experiences I had in high school and college. We want to give children those stories that inspire them to, as Dr. Roland Lassiter used to say, the habitual vision of greatness. So if we start producing students, if we start forming students in this concept that they should have a habitual vision of greatness, what are they walking away from school with? They're walking away from school with this concept that life is about a quest, and I'm going to find that quest, and I'm going to go win, right? And their imagination has been filled, more than filled. It's been given an opportunity to exist, right? So much of what we do today is anti-imagination, and I think that's one of the grave mistakes that many parents make. Is they're not participating in activities or allowing activities to come into their family life, and certainly educationally, which support the great development of an imagination. And I don't know how you make it through anything without a rich imagination.
Yes, that's for sure.
I mean, something as simple as this. I really want to go to heaven, and I know it's unknowable in a way, right? Mm-hmm. But I start imagining things. My wife gets a little upset when I think of heaven as a eternal banquet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I say, the Our Father, and on earth as it is in heaven. So I say, let's banquet. But I think we need an imagination in order to become saints, in order to become heroes, in order to see greatness in ourselves, even if it's in our own small little circle.
Oh, sure. That's where you start,
we have
right?
to be great.
That's where we start.
Right.
And that's good.
It's great.
You can, if that's supposed to happen, it'll become a bigger circle, but as long as you're in the circle, you're good.
Yeah, and I had heard one of the podcasts you did with a gentleman who he's a teacher, and he was writing about the different ages of philosophy and postmodernism and whatnot. And I think you said in there, I think you talked about how you're not really you never thought of yourself as being the kind of person to go up on stage and
right.
talk or something like that,
right.
or maybe even this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you walk day to day, our Lord unveils certain things to you, and you just have to say yes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you can do that without an openness.
I don't think so. I don't think I did. Not to the extent, I've been writing about my past, and the first things I wrote down were moments of discontent and misunderstanding. But once I had those written down, then I went back and I wrote down all the ways that I was active in school and after school and my friendships. And I mm-hmm. realized that no matter how many times something happened that stopped me, I persevered. And it wasn't until I wrote that all down and recognized what I'd been through and what I'd done that I'd persevered pretty well.
Yes.
Even though my time as a Christian wasn't as alive as it is now, and now that it is more alive, this is the time where I say yes to things that I would have said, I'm not ready, or it's too much for me, or would what I say be useful? Can I be someone who can give someone else a leg up, but I never thought I could do any of those things. And I've realized now that it's not about what I think I can do. It's just whether I put myself forward and do it.
Yeah.
And how well I prepare, and I can just be open that there's something here that is here to discover. So it's a discovery, right? Every day.
Yeah, and isn't that one of the beautiful lessons of history?
Oh my goodness, it's a relief when you know
see
that.
over and over and over. And then those who are written about, the ones that actually make the history books, as characters in the history stories, are the ones that did exactly that. They just kept moving forward. Mm-hmm. And again, that wasn't always a good person.
Right.
Right. Even a bad person can do that.
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
yes.
And I think it's important for one of the hopes that we have for our students as they encounter the histories that they're reading is that they realize there's a arc of Western civilization that we sort of live upon, and thankfully in Catholic schools we can understand that, because it's for everybody, but we can be more overt about it. There's an arc of salvation history that we also live within. And so as we see that march of history go on and different players come and go, we could still see the hand of God in it. We could see development. We can also see, say in Western civilization, you could see development and devolvement. Mm-hmm. It goes up and down. And so they are hopefully seeing in themselves the opportunity, no, more than the opportunity, I think the responsibility to be a part of that arc of history, mm-hmm. both arcs of history. And again, a good storyteller, a good teacher will have the kids understand, even though the story might be about a great person, they're going to color that story enough to make the students understand that every human being involved in that community or that kingdom or that society, they all had a part to play in this coming out to be a part of history. So just because you're not going to be a senator or a king or a
central person, yeah.
You are a central person in the story of your family. Mm-hmm. And that let's say Pope Leo XIII, he had a mother and a grandmother. And we don't know about them maybe. But what they did ended up giving us this great pope, or maybe this great emperor, or maybe this horrible leader.
Yeah,
right. So mm-hmm. they need to understand that they have a part in history. And I want them to walk away knowing that.
I'm just thinking of people who might be paying too much attention to the zeitgeist of today and trying to base their education of their children on that. It's good to step back from what you're doing with your kids and look historically at, and we have a hard time with great figures of the past now. It's very interesting, how they want to topple the statues of all our great fathers. It's very short-sighted, first of all, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also very disrespectful. But then if you're not getting the guidance you need, then I wonder if you start to question the authority of those people that came before you because you're not getting the guidance, that you don't see the solid guidance behind you, and embedding these Catholic stories. Even if your parents are, everybody's flawed. Parents are flawed, kids are flawed, everybody's flawed. But if you have the biblical stories that are weaved into your children's lives, then even if mom and dad aren't being the best mom and dad that you wish they could be, you can always get your learning and your questions answered from looking more deeply. And we're missing that in so many families. It'd be really good to put that back in. You know, I don't know if there's any way for us to survive without it. I don't see it, because I see there's many ways. I always say no until the argument for yes is sound. And so there's so many ways to go wrong, and only this one way.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
That can answer your questions and answer your arguments. So there's, with it, I think back, if I was raising my girls now, that's what I would tell them. Like, the answer is no, decidedly no for everything, unless the argument is so sound that you can't see any trouble with it, and then you can say yes. But the go-to is no. The go-to is no.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we have that in our society, that sureness for ourselves that we can say no.
Yeah, I
instead of always saying yes.
Well, the society wants us to say yes. It's a very materialistic, advertising-oriented society. Every time we turn around, somebody wants us to have these shoes or this hat or that phone or whatever. It's just
constant,
slammed down on us all the time. And kids go to school, and if they're not wearing the right shoes or doing the right things or saying the right things, they're scoffed at. So they're being trained in that way. It's a culture of it's a cultural slavery is what it is. So when you look at something like slavery and the horribleness of it, you can only fight it by understanding that there's a true dignity of every human person. And that's the church's. Now, some people in the church weren't, but the church herself was a big champion of that. And we have terrible slavery today with the whole sex trafficking.
Oh yeah, isn't that remarkable?
It's just horrid. But the stories of history, I think you mentioned, even if you're not perfect or your parents aren't perfect, that's fine. Again, the perspective that kids gain when studying the stories of history is really important. I mean, think of what a complex character David was. He was a mess, but he was also great, right? And so we sin and we are redeemed. And young people need to know that. That's part of this habitual vision of greatness. We can be redeemed.
Yeah. And the Bible stories, it's all about redemption. All those figures were flawed, and some terribly so.
Right.
Some of the greatest ones terribly so.
Yeah, in our town, I ran St. Augustine Academy in Ventura, California for 20 years. And it's a beautiful, beautiful community. And boy, do we have some good history teachers. They were wonderful. They lived story. And in fact, every year we have a history day. So we cycle through 3 history days: the ancient, medieval, and then colonial America. And it gives the children opportunities to sort of live in that time. They put teams together from kindergarten through 12th grade. So every team has the whole range of kids. They study elements from that time period, and then they have quizzes on them. They dress, they divide up into the different kingdoms, they have banquets, they give boasts, and they do songs, and it's just an amazing experience. And it lasts several weeks to get it prepped, and then the day of course, the big celebration. But that gives the students a real sense of their own part in history. And then a few years ago, they, in the craziness of the statues, they wanted to tear down the St. Junipero Serra statue, which stood majestically at the foot of City Hall overlooking the ocean. It's just a stunning scene. And of course, they wanted to tear it down and get rid of it. And they were going to have a protest. And so, I mean, I don't know how many, but a lot of our school families showed up. And I thought, this is a school that gets to the heart of the forming of young people and community, that understands history, the importance of history, and why we should stand up for it and preserve it. So they all showed up. A lot of the other, I don't know if there's any other schools there. There were some other, I know there were some other Catholic kids that go to the schools, but it was really beautiful to see how much our kids seemed to be formed in the right way, to understand this was an issue.
Yeah, to stand up.
Thankfully, the pastor at the mission, he took it, the city finally voted to get rid of it. And so he took it and moved it over to the mission, which coincidentally is St. Junipero Serra's last mission that he built. So it's sitting in a very beautiful place.
No, that's good.
Saved.
Yeah. Well, whether we have a very small kingdom that's just our family, or a bigger kingdom, which would be our community, and bigger than that. But when someone has a family, finally, I remember when I had my first child, I took her home to meet my husband's parents. And I looked at everybody watching my baby jump up and down in her jolly jumper, and I thought, oh, I see. I've offered something to the family that is better than anything I could have ever imagined giving them. And I'm in custodialship. I'm taking care of this prize that the family is overwhelmed with joy about, and that's something that these young women today who wonder what's important, whether they should go have a career or whether they should have family. As far as I'm concerned, there's no choice, because a family has to happen in a limited amount of time. There's lots of time for a career, but there's only a very short time to find a husband and have children, and that those stories can help women know what they're looking for. Because I think when girls become teenagers, they don't exactly know what they're looking for, but they're looking for a husband. That's what they're looking for. It's pretty simple, but for some reason that hasn't been the narrative that has been shared with
No.
in our education system. You're old enough now. You're turning into a woman. You're looking for a husband. And wow, to have a husband and some children and then start your career. Wow, you have a long life. You might have 50 years to have a career. That's plenty of time.
Right.
But then you have all of these people to share that knowledge with. And like you said, the joy of the journey. And so with these stories that you're talking about, people can have the right story in mind when they grow up.
Yes. Yeah, again, it gives them perspective. And we have to look beyond the zeitgeist. We have to look beyond what our pals are doing. It's TikTok's not going to satisfy you.
No.
For 7 seconds it might, but it's not going to satisfy you.
Well, any
It's
of
not
the
gonna
social
teach
media,
you.
really.
Right.
I don't even. I used to look at Twitter, and I used to get some information from it, but it seems less and less the case now. YouTube, all these things, because they change so fast, they end up being very good for a little while, and then they devolve. And now YouTube's into these shorts that aren't very long stories at all. And so people are left to real sound bites instead of deep stories, full-length stories.
And I think that points to, it points back to what is the purpose of education. And I think education, the church teaches very clearly that, and if I'm not mistaken, this goes back to Plato too. It's a transference of culture. Mm-hmm. And it's the opportunity to transfer culture or to not transfer culture. And I think what we as Catholic educators need to embrace so fully is that if education is a transference of culture, then we sort of have the market on that, because we have the beautiful full history of the development of culture and civilization over millennia. We have our origins in the classical world, but our end, liberal education, as in education of the free man or to freedom, that's our end. And our end really is freedom in Christ. So if every Catholic educator walks into it thinking, our goal is to make children free in Christ, mm-hmm. or maybe it's better said, because education comes from the Latin to lead, we lead them to the freedom that they will find in Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, freedom, people think of freedom as free from everything, but if that was the case, then you could be dropped in the middle of the ocean and you'd be free. But that's just not how it works.
It's just not how it works.
No, you have to take context. You have to take context, and context can be an everyday context, but it can be a context that goes over time, which is a much fuller, stronger, resilient context, so that you get all the different aspects to inform you about what's going on in the present.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Yeah. So that sounds like the optimum idea.
Yeah. Another thing that just comes to mind is you talked about the girls. Mm-hmm. Their psychological and biological knitting points to one direction, and that is being tampered down. And it's tampered down for many reasons, but one of them is that two-dimensional reality that they're living in. So, again, looking back to Catholic education, one of the greatest things that we can offer young people is vibrant community. Mm-hmm. So I think Archbishop Michael Miller, he summarized many church documents by coming up with the 5 marks of a Catholic school. And the center one is it's imbued by community and communion. Mm-hmm. That our schools need to live in that.
What are the 5?
Oh, gosh.
Do you remember?
You put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
Talking about it all the time, but so I could tell you number 5. Let me start with that, because teachers should be a gospel witness, and that's another thing that we've sort of stepped aside from when we think about Catholic education. We just have to have an expert in this, and that's the most important thing. No, it's not the most important thing. It's important to find excellent teachers, and teachers who are very competent in their subject matter. But they also need to be learners. They need to want to know, especially at elementary, secondary. You want a teacher that loves knowledge of everything, right? But it's all directed towards understanding creation and God. So we want to fill our classrooms with gospel witnesses. Number 4, if you allow me to go backwards, number 4 is that Catholicism must permeate the entire curriculum, and many popes have written about this. Any study is a study of reality, whether it's science or history or English. Literature looks at what humanity and how they think and interact and the beautiful stories about that. Well, it should all be ordered towards truth. And so that should permeate every subject, especially the secular subjects. 3 is communion and community. 2 is that Christian anthropology, in other words, the proper understanding of what man is, should be the guiding influence on how we educate. So it has a strong directive for us, both in what kind of content we teach, because we're teaching about humanity and creation, but also pedagogically. I think it's really important that we teach students in the manner in which they are growing as human beings. So God created us in his image and likeness. And a baby's mind is, holding my new little grandson, I look at him and just think, you are just exploding connections inside your cranium. The brain is building, and they look around, and in a week's time, they change. And in a month's time, they change enormously. And so we have to, I think what we do is we bow to God's creation and say, let us teach children in the manner in which he has created them, such that they're growing as even Jesus did in knowledge, grace, and wisdom. So we do things differently for a kindergartner, or a first grader, or a fourth grader than we do for an 8th grader, or a 12th grader, or a 28-year-old. In the early years, we're really building the brain, we're building skills, we're building content, but in a way that's very different than when they get older and start to really delve into the logic and the rhetoric elements of a liberal arts education. And sometimes we get a little fascinated with all the beautiful things of, say, the great works. And we want our little tiny kids to do it because it's really awesome.
I think little kids are really open and excited by beauty. Because they're so much closer to a pure being, then beauty is something that brings them back to that purity. Do you have a book?
I have the Holy See's teaching on Catholic schools here.
Oh, okay.
But yes, little children are made for beauty. They're made for story. They're made for poetry. They're made for movement. I mean, they run all the time, right? They just can't stop moving. So all of these things go into the formation and development of their body, mind, and soul. We just had our national conference for the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education 2 weeks ago in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Bishop Conley talked about his own education at Kansas University of Kansas, KU, Kansas University, University of Kansas. The Peterson program with John Sr. And one of the fundamentals that John Sr. taught was that you need the good books before the great books, that you need to fill children with imagination and reality before you can really start to get into the heavy stuff. And so we need to, as Catholic elementary, secondary educators, we need to really imbibe that and say, I need to help provide an environment for children whereby they are getting enriched so deeply that when they get to the points of really flowering into the elements of logic and rhetoric and philosophy and theology, that they have the capacity to do that with. They have the context to be able to think about things instead of just spitting out the latest headline. Mm-hmm. So this is the little book that goes through these wonderful marks.
So these are for young kids. This book, yes.
This is for
teachers teaching young kids.
Teaching young kids. I mean, anybody really. But that let me just finish the fifth. That's inspired by a supernatural vision, and he puts that first, I think, because everything that we do, if we're not inspired by a supernatural vision, I don't think any of it makes sense.
No, it doesn't, because if your intention isn't pure, your first intention isn't pure, then your direction isn't right. So it's all about the intention. Right. The first intention. What is your intention? You know, are you looking for what is the best thing that you can do right now for the situation, for the other person you're with? Or do you have another agenda that you're trying to impose on it? And it's the intention at the beginning that will bring about small miracles every day, because the intention was there. And so you teach the intention.
Yeah, and I think if you're inspired by a supernatural vision, you're not afraid of truth. Mm. I had one of our graduates from St. Augustine in May gave a talk, one of the student addresses, and she most brilliantly described the fact that anything that we studied, and there was some, she brought up some piece of the Civil War study that they had, and how the teacher asked a question. It's kind of an open question, but the students had already read and studied, so now they had material that they could talk about instead of just opine, right? But they could talk about real things that they read. And they could talk about them in the context of having also read original works from the foundings of our country, understanding where our founding comes from, even more so back in Europe, Rome, Greece. So these students were able to kind of attack anything that the teacher said. And he let them. And he said, okay, why do you say that? Tell me more. You know, and another student say, no, that's not right, John. Oh, that's not right, Jane. And they would bring up quotes from the various things they read, or ideas of, say, Jefferson or something. So what she reflected on there was, my peers in other schools aren't allowed to think or argue. They're really, if they start questioning their teacher, they get shut down. And you've got to do your work. And I know that's not the case in every school, but at our school, it's open-throated, let's seek the truth. Now, part of the beauty of that is St. Augustine Academy. I chided the fellow that sort of proposed that name for the school when we started, because St. Augustine wasn't the best teenager example. He's kind of a naughty guy. But he said, well, it's true, but there was one thing that drove everything else for him, and that was his desire to find truth. And ultimately, Augustine found him truth. And so that's what we want our kids to have in going through our school. We want them to, whatever vicissitudes they go through in life, I want them to ultimately end with, I found truth and I love him.
So what was you were going to show me something?
Yeah, I'll give
in
you
there.
this book. It's a very little, super short volume, and Archbishop Miller was the secretary for the Congregation of Catholic Education, and I actually, when he was there, we had just published our first 2 books, and so I wrote a letter and said, I know you're a historian, and we've just published these new books. It's the first history textbooks for Catholic schools in over 40 years. And I just like to drop them off and thank you for your service to the church. So he wrote back, surprisingly, and said, come at 10 o'clock. We'll have 10 minutes in the parlor. So we were in Rome with my parents and the kids, and I go up the stairs. Everybody else stays down on the Villa Conciliazione, and I go up to meet the Archbishop and spend over an hour with him. He was just enthralled. It was really beautiful, and he loved the project. He still loves the project. He thinks it's enormously important because, as Mark IV says, Catholicism should permeate the entire curriculum. We shouldn't be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. It's the fullness of truth. But I asked him a few years ago, I saw him again, and I said, I was talking about the benchmarks of Catholic education. He says, "Oh, no, Michael, not benchmarks. They're marks of a Catholic school, like the marks of the church. It's not something we try to do. It's just the sign that this is the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. When you have those marks, you know you're in the full true church." Mm-hmm. So too, he says, if these exist in a school, you know you have a Catholic school. And if they don't exist and you are a Catholic school, you better try to get there, because these should be your identity. So it's a beautiful summary of, as I said earlier, church teaching. So he draws from a lot of the church documents over the years to give us a sense of what does the church think about education. And remember, she's not thinking about education just in America. She's thinking about it in the Congo and in Iraq and in Southeast Asia. So she has a responsibility for promoting Catholic education everywhere.
Yeah, well, I'll look at that, because I am very interested. Well, of course, I have grandchildren now.
Yes.
And as a grandmother, my place is to bring whatever wisdom I have been able to attain in my life and share it with my grandkids.
Yes.
And that's my job.
It is.
Yeah.
The vocation of grandparenthood.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's unique.
Yeah.
And one
important.
of the biggest things we could do is pray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, my grandchild, she's now 8, and I can pray with her. She'll pray with me. And at night, if she wakes up and she's afraid, she'll ask Jesus to come to her, and then she just goes back to sleep. So she doesn't have any fears in the night. And that's a big deal, because lots of little kids have fears in the night.
They do.
And they don't know what to do with them. Because there's always, if there's a corner in the room that's dark and empty, there's something there. Because kids in their imaginations will put something
Right.
there, and it'll keep you awake for a long time unless you have the knowledge that all you have to do is pray, mm-hmm. and that'll fill you up, and then those things won't be there anymore.
Indeed.
So,
yeah, that's the habitual vision of greatness. And who's the greatest? Jesus himself.
yeah.
And then you've got the amazing array of saints throughout the ages. I mean, it's so
Yeah, and I don't know
inspiring and
hardly
beautiful.
anything about them, so that would be a good thing to teach people.
It's a great thing to teach people. And one of the benefits of reading saint stories especially, for everybody, but especially for children, is to understand that the saints were, there was St. Thomas Aquinas, who was the angelic doctor. I mean, very, 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 very intelligent.
Very
right?
smart, yeah.
And rotund. And,
Oh, yeah?
and then you have little St. Bernadette, who lived about, 400 or 500 miles south. A few centuries later, 500 years later. So, and she was not very, 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 very intelligent. But she had the wisdom of infused grace from God. And she's purported to have said in the convent, well, why did Mary pick you? She said, well, if she would have found somebody dumber, Mary would have picked them. But I was the dumbest one in Lourdes. So there's rich saints and poor saints. They're from every continent. They're from every age. They're smart. They're not smart. Some of them were irascible. Some of them were joyful. There's common things in every one of them too, and they all suffered. Every single one of them suffered plenty, and so one might draw from that the lesson that suffering's actually beneficial. Suffering's good. It makes me stronger. It makes me more focused on the true end, and not myself, etc. So there's just so many stories, and it makes a young person realize, God made me to be a saint. I wonder what my story is.
Yeah. And that in your story, there's going to be suffering.
Yes.
There's going to be suffering. And, if you can be open to having your faith be your guide, then often that is, the becoming of your faith in a very strong way, the more you suffer. I feel like I got scraped right off, just got scraped off the road by God. Just scraped me off the road and said, nope, you're not done yet. Now you have something to do.
Yeah, and think of that theological virtue that accompanies that.
Yeah.
Hope.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I've spoke to people who I really love who, they have a hard time with hope. But because I have hope, that seems to be of help to the people that I love. And so, and that's enough for me even. That's enough if that's who I am. So we don't have to go far and wide to find fulfillment for our lives.
Well, that's the
But
baptismal
God,
call.
they'll send us out, though. I get sent
You
on
get
mission.
Sent out. Here you are.
Yeah,
today.
here I am.
You're out.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's what we do. I mean, God wants us to be His lights.
Yeah.
So at every turn, what we need to image, number 5 of the marks of the Catholic school, we need to be gospel witnesses at every turn, even in the grocery store.
Yeah.
You encounter somebody who's having a bad day and they're grumpy or whatnot, and you just be a light to them. My ride over to the airport this morning was with this wonderful gentleman from India, and we just had the best conversation. And it sort of, he helped walk it along too, and we sort of ended with St. Augustine's quote, that our hearts are restless till they rest in thee. So it was really beautiful.
Oh, that is beautiful. I walk in the morning along the beach in Toronto, and there's other people walking. This is early when the sun first comes up. And the first day I walked, because I only just moved there, the first day I walked, no one, I would smile and say hello, and no one was smiling and saying hello. By the 5th day, people were starting to smile and say hello. And I thought, it's up to me.
It is up to it. Yeah. Every one of us.
Yeah. If what you see gives you pause, it's up to you to change it.
Yeah. Yes. That's why it's so important that our our Catholic schools, our homeschool co-ops, whatever they are, that we're raising children in a spirit of joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think you just get more joy when you're learning poetry and studying great things and surrounding yourselves with beautiful art. Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the
common
beauty,
sense.
the beauty.
Transcendence, transcendentals are they're everything for what we want to focus on.
Well, we didn't know until very, very recently that the modern art movement was a politically motivated movement. You know, that the classic art schools that still exist in some places like Russia, we left them behind in part of this leaving God behind. And that's a dicey thing to do. It's a dicey thing to do, whether you understand that now or later. It's something to keep in mind because it is a way forward when you humble yourself and take God's will as number one. Your life changes. And so if we can do that for little children, you know, they may leave it and come back to it, but if they have the foundation, like you said, if they have the foundation, then they have something to come back to that's exactly. Already formed. It's already defined. Yeah.
Yes, give them something to come back to.
Yeah, right. Because they're going to be pulled this way and that way. This is society, and it's really pulling us now because of these things that we have that are, we don't even know what they are.
No, you're right.
I think they're the sole of my shoe is what they are. That's what I think of it as. But
an image that has sort of guided my entire career in Catholic education has been Rembrandt's Prodigal Son picture. Mm-hmm. And it's hung behind my desk for most of my career and now in my office. It's the concept that there's sin and salvation, and our Lord will welcome us home at any time.
Yeah.
But there's an incumbency on us too to actually want to go home. So the home is there, and that's what we as parents and teachers are supposed to help inculcate into children, so that when they wake up, and granted, many never stray far. They're just your normal daily sinners. But those that do stray and go far, they know that they can come home. But they, in a way, we want them to not because we want them to suffer, but we want them to suffer enough that they want to come home. They know
and maybe if their formation is developed enough, then the suffering doesn't have to be so deep.
Oh, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Part of the purpose of trying to educate well and give them that vision, the habitual vision. And
I know some of us are stubborn vision. And we'll make sure that it's difficult as possible. But not if you have that background, then I think it's there. And so so the calling is there already when you look up and look for it.
Yeah, and the prodigal knew that even as a servant in his father's home, he would be treated justly. He didn't have all the advantages of being the son of the great master. That's not what he wanted. He just wanted a life of simple justice. And he knew he could get that because that's what he was raised in. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful image to keep in mind, and I think it also echoes the Augustine quote, right? That the prodigal's heart was restless, he was beaten down, and he knew where he would find rest.
Yeah, right. So what What are the things that are on your calendar coming up?
On my calendar coming up, well, I think as I mentioned in the beginning, my big effort now is to complete this K-12 history textbook series. So we're in the middle of writing K-3. We are, and that's going to be a really beautiful tool for teachers and an inspiring storybook for children. It will also be crafted in a way that the modern teacher will be able to pick it up and use it and sort of not miss a beat. So the teacher will be brought right into the beauty of the story and the how-to of that real human pedagogy that is appropriate for a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, not a 20-year-old. So that's beautiful. Then the 10th grade book, as I said, is also in process, and I'll be looking for putting together an editorial committee and writers for the civics and econ. As we do that, I'm out also trying to help find funders to help us through that process. We only right now serve Catholic schools, so it's a smaller market. Now, we're in a significant part of the market, but the whole market is kind of small. So we're healthy as a company, but we don't have the kind of extra funds that allow the research and development sort of phase to go on quickly. Right. So it's taken us a lot of years to produce what we've done because we've done it slowly. We can't wait anymore. The market doesn't want us to wait anymore. I mean, the children need healthy food. So we've got to get it to them as quickly as possible. And that's that's something big that I'm working on over the next year and a half is to help fund that what for us is a very aggressive calendar for publishing. For the big boys, it's just what they do. So it's not a problem for them. So that's a big part of my work in, I'd say the next 18 months is to try to make sure that we get that fully funded so we don't have to slow down or stop production on those. And then I guess calendar wise, I'll be bouncing around to a few conferences here and there. And
what about your avocado farms? How do they
we just
exist
harvested
without you being there?
Avocados are beautiful trees.
Yeah, they are beautiful trees.
They're like weeds. So as long as
they're easy to grow, are
get
they
their
easy to grow?
sun and their water,
they
grow pretty easily. They love to be trimmed little bits here and there. They get happy when you do that.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing about
do you
avocados,
do you cut them when they're ripe or when they're not ripe?
So
okay.
This is really interesting.
Okay.
So avocados are we can harvest at our ranch as early as February typically. We typically leave them on the tree till May or June.
Oh,
we do
I see.
harvest later, and they don't ripen until after they're picked.
Right.
We leave a couple trees for us because we want to keep having our own. And I would say October, yes. November is iffy. Sometimes you'll have a few left in December, still hanging on a tree. They get weaker as they're on the tree too long. And then it's a horrible 2 or 3 months where I actually have to buy avocados, but then they come again.
Yeah. Oh boy, it must be nice to have an avocado off a tree.
It is. I mean, they still have to take their time to ripen.
Yeah.
So
How long do they take to ripe?
Usually about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually about a week.
And how do you in a paper bag? No.
We just leave them on the counter.
Okay.
If you put them in a paper bag, you can hasten it a little.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Right.
But the other thing about avocados that's interesting is every one of them has to be clipped. You don't pick them like an apple. or a peach. You have to clip in order to leave a little bit of the stem, because that sort of becomes the chimney through which the evaporation goes out and the gases come in.
Right.
So they ripen more evenly is what I understand.
I see.
So, but it's more laborious.
How long have you had an avocado farm?
2008.
Oh, what inspired you to do that?
It was more just a gift from God than inspiration.
Oh, okay.
We love we love nature, and so we've always wanted a little piece of property, and we moved to California in 2000, and we're renting, and we were renting on a big ranch. It was really lovely, but didn't belong to us. And then when the market crashed in 2007-8, a little tiny ranch came up across the barranca, and it was perfect timing. The kids were, the last child was coming to my school, and so my wife was opening the lower elementary school that same summer. So everything fell into place, and we were able to buy this little place, and it's just been a great retreat for us ever since.
Do you have any animals?
No animals.
No, avocados.
A dog. We've had a few things over the years, the chickens and the goats.
Yeah.
But my daughter she was good at taking care of animals. So she had a farmer friend, and she'd bring home, baby sheep or something like that.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. I used to bring home kitty cats, but I think my mom was allergic to them. She wasn't very open to having kitty cats in her house.
We have to have kitty cats to keep the
mice away.
Rodents at bay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Or even bigger rodents, maybe. Are they good hunters?
They're good hunters.
Bigger rodents too?
Well, we don't really have, I guess there are some bigger rodents in the area, but we haven't had any because we have a dog too.
Yeah.
And I think the dog's important to keep away.
Yeah. Noise.
The
noise of a
raccoons used to come, and they're the ones that killed our chickens. And so since we've had the dog, I don't see the raccoons anymore.
I was just with family, and one of my nephews and his wife have chickens and bunnies, and their little kids are 5 and 3, and they're having so much fun with these animals, and to understand the life and how precarious it can be. And
yeah, one thing I wanted for my kids, I guess I grew up a bit in the country outside of Milwaukee, and my parents were big on chores, and so when we had our kids, one of the reasons we looked for some property is I was increasingly aware of how few chores people do anymore. And if we had a piece of property, some animals, some vegetation, I like to think about it as God's chores. And I've mentioned that many times to parents over the years. Even in a town house, you can find God's chores to do. You got to mow the lawn. You got to pick the weeds. You got to take care of the cat or whatever. But God's chores don't stop. Right? You can maybe not dust for a while, and that's not going to hurt anybody or anything. But the dog needs to be fed, and the grass is going to keep growing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think having the property put us into this sort of pathway of God's chores. And so for our kids, it wasn't just mom and dad making chores up. We all had to participate. We all had to give our hand in order to keep the place tidy and growing.
yeah, no, that's a very good idea, I think, for the future. I know that we used to have Sunday meetings where we would discuss what the chores would be for the next week. Oh, my kids, they didn't like to come in because they would be playing outside about 4 PM on Sunday, and they wouldn't want to come in. But they'd come in, and we'd have this painful discussion. And then when they went off to university, I heard that they had Sunday meetings with their roommates. Right?
That's clever.
Isn't that funny?
But I bet they also grew up with a work ethic.
Yeah, right.
See,
Yeah.
my kids all have a great work ethic.
Yeah. It doesn't take much, It's
No.
just my little boy could set the table when he could barely reach it. He could put the knives and forks up there, and he really wanted to work.
Yeah.
And give them a job. They want jobs. They want jobs.
They do, they do.
Makes them feel good about themselves. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Oh, Tammy, it's been a pleasure. Always enjoy
I hope
talking
we talked about what
such
you
things.
wanted to talk about, not just what I wanted to talk about.
No, I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, good.
It's just all such good and beautiful stuff. And
Good luck with your books and
for me,
the sale of your books to far and wide. Yeah.
I think this is the greatest thing that we can focus on as a church, as a people, is the Marxists took over education 100 plus years ago. We need to win it back.
Yeah.
That's how we win our civilization back.
Yeah.